What's going on? This is the Saturday Down South podcast. I am Connor O'Gara. Will, week 9 is the last single-digit week of the college football season. Last weekend of October. I am fired up. We have a great slate, great show coming up. We have Adam Breneman, who's going to join us in a bit, talk about a bunch of different things across college football, a lot of Big Ten stuff, who's the biggest threat to the SEC's dominance, and then, of course, we're going to end with Lad of the Week as well. But, Will, we're talking about your LSU Tigers playing in the most important game, and we're just gonna go right. We're gonna start with that one. Is that okay with you? Or are you ready to go? Do you need like a warm up game, or can we go?
No, fine with me. I'd always like to do my team last and as little as possible. But you know what? If they keep randomly winning these games, we'll take it.
Did you ever have that when you went to the doctor's office as a kid or something like that? And different dynamic, I guess, with you because it's not like direct siblings. But when you went with your sibling and they would say, hey, do you want to go in first or do you want your brother to go in first?
Yeah.
And I always was like, I want to go second. I don't want to go in right now.
Yeah, I gotta go first because I don't like sitting there waiting, thinking, okay, well maybe I do have a cough. I don't know, my hair is a little bit thin. Maybe I have something. So I don't want to be paranoid. I just want to knock it out. So you're right about that.
No, that you're right. I was wrong as a kid. I changed my thinking later on and eventually was like, yes, I need to be the first person to do it. So, all right, let's get into it, Will. Number 8, LSU. Number 14, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, a 2.5 point favorite for this one. The over-under I have is two A&M sacks. That's it.
Okay.
LSU's allowed 2 sacks all year, in case you haven't heard. Both in the South Carolina game. According to PFF, 0 by LSU's starting offensive linemen. I didn't go down the rabbit hole of digging which reserve allowed those sacks or if they just chalk those sacks up to team sacks or how PFF graded that. But you get it. LSU's offensive line confirmed good. As LSU's SID Michael Bonnet pointed out, 7 of the last 8 games in which LSU has played has not allowed a single sack. That'll play. That's good. A&M averaging 2.4 sacks per game, which decent number, probably doesn't tell the full story. Faced 3 mobile quarterbacks in SEC play, and the one who wasn't, Graham Mertz, only attempted 15 passes, got rid of the ball quickly for a Florida offense that was only on the field for 22 minutes. And meanwhile, with this LSU offensive line, I would actually argue that only having 2 sacks allowed is even more impressive when you consider the quality of opponent. It's remarkable to think about this LSU offense having that stat in its favor when they have faced the likes of South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Arkansas. Those defensive lines, they all have guys who could be first-round picks in next year's draft, and it would not necessarily surprise me. 2 of those games were on the road as well, and yet Will Campbell, Emory Jones, those guys continue to lead that group, keep Garrett Nussmeier upright. That matchup feels like everything in this one. It really does. If LSU neutralizes Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, that's huge, obviously. I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, I think Turner on the interior, he's going to be the one that really has to get going, and he's got to be the one that's got to move the pile because if we see Garrett Nussmeier kind of backpedaling in those spots like we saw at different times during that Ole Miss game when you saw actually J.J. Pegues and Walter Nolan doing some things on the interior because that's what they do. They just weren't able to get home. I think that's the version of Garrett Nussmeier you need to see to beat this LSU team. And they still impacted those throws, I think, when they did that. And can A&M, even if it's not getting home, do that? But I just like, and maybe this will be regrettable words, famous last words, but I just like what LSU is turning into on both sides of the ball. I do.
Yeah, it's super interesting, right? Because, this was an offensive line. And again, guys, I've been really down the middle on LSU. I thought LSU deserved the Joe Moore Award last year. I think they had the best offensive line in college football. And the offensive line foundationally has not changed a ton. There have been like a couple of changes here and there, but the guys that are starting on LSU's offensive line, have been around forever. At this point, the 2 tackles have been starting for 3 years. They're just getting better. The thing that's so interesting is I'm not exactly going to say this group is better than last year's. Like I said, Miles Frazier, we've seen Chester's a little bit new, right? But it's the fact that Garrett Nussmeier is better at evading sacks, I think, than JD because JD was also a runner. So like JD would kind of run sideways and try to make a play with his legs. Whereas like so it's kind of like one of those if then theoreticals I always talk about, right? Your favorite thing where I'm like, hey, okay, is this line better than last year's? I don't exactly think so because to your point, with Shamar Turner, I think the interior is a little bit softer. The tackles are obviously the same and better. So why then, with a less mobile quarterback, are they so much better at giving up sacks? When you start to factor in that the run game is not as great and that scheme, you start to see, well, how can we isolate this? And the answer is that Nussmeier not only gets the ball out fast, but he has like a very weird, like, I never say stuff like sneaky mobility, but in the same way that we would see these veteran quarterbacks like late career, like Tom Brady, where he wasn't that mobile, but he could just take 2 steps to the right.
Pocket mobility. Yeah, good footwork.
Exactly.
It goes a long way.
Yeah, like Breeze was the king of this, where he would take take his drop, and then he would take 2 steps forward, and the DNs would crash into each other behind him, and he would have the cleanest pocket ever because he would get him stuck on that old, point that he was at. So yeah, I'm so fascinated by this offensive line because Will Campbell, I mean, you could make an argument too, right? I was actually just talking about this with Peyton, where Will Campbell is not super technically sound at this point in his career. He still has a lot of just like that dog in him, and a lot of that comes from starting for as long as he did, not really just like being able to sit down and work on his craft outside of the lights. And that's good and bad, right? But I think he actually has a lot of growth to do as a pro. And you could almost make the same thing about Nussmeier, where it's like the picks he's throwing aren't really because he's under pressure. They're just kind of like he's bored. And it's like Kyron Lacey down there somewhere. And like you see, like the way he threw against Ole Miss is like, what are you doing here, dude? Same thing against the South Carolina one. It's like, those are the easiest types of picks to fix because it's not like, you're freaking out, you're under pressure. It's like, no, this dude just thinks he can throw the ball to a point, a million miles away. So yeah, I think for sure it's in the pass game, but I think in the run game and with that interior, I think you're definitely right. Like LSU, they've finally decided that Caden Durham is good, which is awesome. He had 3 touchdowns, 100 yards, first time a freshman has done that for LSU since 1995. So that maybe itself, having a running back that can kind of overcome some of those weird schemes they do. But I think the run game is going to be the key because the pass game, I think, is pretty sound as far as the O-line goes.
Well, you brought up the Ewing theory, the Bill Simmons Ewing theory, to describe how this defense has sort of taken off since the Harold Perkins injury. And this is going to sound bad, and I'm not intending for it to be bad, but I do find myself wondering if Blake Baker sort of had this exhale the first time he sat down to come up with a game plan and realized I don't have to spend this time figuring out if I'm using Harold Perkins in the best possible way. Obviously, of course, you would still rather have Harold Perkins on your defense than not, okay? Not saying that. But I guarantee that there's an element of Blake Baker with what he's done where he feels like this is now coming together and maybe it's just simpler. And for LSU, that's important because you brought it up the other day. You've got guys at each level that are playing at an all SEC type level at this point of the season with Weeks, with Swinson, and obviously as long as Zay Alexander's healthy, that's so important. I think Zay Alexander in a game like this is especially important because do I think that Blake Baker's blitz packages will be reminiscent of what Al Golden and Marcus Freeman tried to do in that season opener? Yeah, like wouldn't be surprising. Wouldn't be surprising if they try to throw a variety of looks at Connor Wigman and say, what can you handle? Where are you going with your reads? Because at certain points of that Notre Dame game, Connor Wigman was so out of sorts that he just was kind of blindly throwing in the direction of a ball hawk like Xavier Watts, which that's not part of the game plan to try and attack one of the best defensive backs in all of college football. LSU finally has a guy where if you just sort of blindly do that, he's going to make you pay. That's what Zay Alexander can be for this group. If Connor Wigman says, if I see the blitz, I'm going Noah Thomas, I'm not thinking twice about it. Great game to see the growth of Connor Wigman with that in mind and with what LSU figures to present with the style of this Blake Baker defense. You want to be a big-time prospect and get that national attention where people can actually pronounce your name correctly instead of calling you Connor Wegman for an entire broadcast. You want people to correctly say Connor Wigman. Go make a name for yourself. Go do it in a game like this with huge, huge implications. Trivia question for you, Will. Who was the last LSU quarterback to win a game at Kyle Field?
Oh, man, don't tell me that because I know it's not Jaden Daniels. I mean, it's our boy. Max Johnson.
It is not Max Johnson.
Really? Who is it?
Danny Etling. 2016.
Oh, because that one was at home that I'm thinking of. You're
Back
so right.
and forth. back and forth.
Yep.
That's what this game has become. And it's a little bit, it's Kentucky, Mississippi State. Home team's going to win. Home team just continues to win this game year after year. So will that continue? You know, it's interesting that year that happened was 2016. That was also the last time that A&M started off 4-0 in SEC play.
Mm-hmm.
Not pretending that a collapse like that this time around is coming, because I think A&M is doing a lot of things that Mike Elko hoped they would do in year one. But I am predicting an LSU victory on Saturday night, even though I do, if we're going off vibes, the late decision, the midweek decision to go with the black uniforms for A&M, like that. I'm not saying that's worth a full 1.5. It's worth something. It's worth the vibe, and the vibe at Kyle Field will be off the charts. I'm going with LSU to win this one, 27-24 game-winning field goal. Visiting team wins.
Love that. You know, I'm very superstitious with kickers. I'm
a little stitious.
Yeah, like that's what. Have you ever seen my joke? I don't know if you've watched a game with me where it's come down to a kick, but every time there is a college kick. I don't know what started. I think it was the Florida kick that was missed. One of the ones in like 2020, where I will just start talking about how probable it is that the kick goes in. It's like what a little quirk of watching football with me, where I'm like, this is so easy. Like statistically, he's only missed one of these. That was like the one thing we didn't even get into was those two weird kicks that Josh Heupel went for in that game, because it didn't end up mattering. That guy just kind of like sunk his kicker in the middle of the Bama game. But anyway, so yeah, like that. I never want to talk about kicking, but I will say what's so interesting too, and you hit on this, is like, the Brian Kelly coaching tree, right? It comes down to these two teams, which are inexplicably undefeated. We talk about schedules, guys.
In conference play,
yeah. Undefeated in conference play, you're right. And, of course, with the losses being a weird Lincoln Riley game and DeMarcus Freeman. And it's kind of fitting, right, that we're talking about, the offensive line versus the defense, two things that Brian Kelly has been known for. And I think that what's interesting is that Blake Baker is outside of Brian Kelly's defensive coaching tree. Like if you look at what Freeman runs, you look at what Elko likes to run, Blake Baker is a little bit different from those guys. And I think that goes to show that Blake Baker was him being like, you know what, guys, I'm going to go hire Corey Raymond. I'm going to go hire Blake Baker. You guys are right. I don't actually – Matt House was my guy, or he's our third or fourth choice. At least we had the courage to say that, unlike Kane Womack. But at the end of the day, we was like, we ended up with this guy. I tried it my way. It didn't work. A little bit of adapt or die there. So I think we already saw, like I said, the Notre Dame A&M version of this game, where you've seen two kind of like early career coaches under that coaching tree going at each other. Now we're going to see a version of almost like the Kirby Saban thing, without the titles, obviously, where it's like, okay, well, you're running kind of a new version of your own thing, because you ran your thing for long enough that you're kind of tired of that. You're doing something, whereas I'm running your thing. I'm running the defense that you love. And granted, like Brian Kelly is an offensive coach. People forget that. That's actually his background, because he's often had great defenses and very dumb-looking offenses at Notre Dame. Like offenses that
if you don't have a bunch of NFL quarterbacks, it's very easy to forget you're an offensive-minded head coach. And by the way, I love that in this comp, Brian Kelly is Nick Saban.
Well, yeah, because he's the one who's coaching college football. And now that Nick Saban retired, he's been in the game a while. And when your offensive coaching tree is our boy, who is it, Bama, that I accidentally called Pete, and now I think that's his name.
Pete Golding, are you talking about?
No, the offensive coordinator at Alabama.
Nick
that was there. No. That was there for
Tommy
last
Reese,
year.
Bill
Tommy
O'Brien?
Reese. That was Tommy Reese. Like, so when
Brian
that's
Dable? No, I'm kidding.
That guy. Anyway, so yeah, like Tommy Reese is kind of your offensive coaching tree. There's the guy at I think Miami, Ohio too, who's just kind of hanging out there. It's a Brian Kelly guy. But point being, like you see, like Robert Saleh, Brian Kelly defensive assistant. So point being, like this is another one of those proof of concept games. And like I said, the thing that's going to be interesting is that Brian Kelly is running a pretty unique defense from what he's had the rest of his career. That being said, I know I said I would pick LSU, or I'd pick A&M at a neutral site, but that Arkansas game really did show me something, as did, I think, A&M not being as dominant in their last game. I think that if we get the version of Connor Wigman that played against Mizzou, turn on the lights, it might be pretty rough for LSU. But I think that, the pass rush and the defense that LSU has right now, and what they showed against Arkansas and Ole Miss when their offense wasn't great against Ole Miss, and it kind of like, it's weird that the offense is the question. So I say all of that rambling answer to say I'm right in line with you. I think we're going to go, let's call it 28-21 LSU, because I don't like kickers. But that's it. I think it's going to be a really close game, and I think that's even disrespectful. Let's say it's about a 3-point win for LSU in the 20s. 0
field goals attempted. Those are only touchdowns and extra points afterwards. Every team goes for it on 4th down, or it's a pooch punt. Yes, no kicks whatsoever.
Art school football math right there, buddy. Sevens.
Yeah, exactly. This game is a great reminder. maybe not reminder, because I think a lot of people were skeptical of how this was going to go. But I think it's the beauty of the divisionless SEC.
Mm-hmm.
I think seeing these two teams, who are, again, the last two teams in the SEC without a conference loss, seeing these two teams play on this stage and realizing what's at stake and what the winner can obtain is why this is different than how it was before. Think about how many years in which it felt like the SEC championship was decided in early November, Halloween weekend, or the weekend after, with Florida and Georgia playing in Jacksonville, or Alabama and LSU playing. Alabama and LSU, the winner of that game went to Atlanta 14 of the last 17 years. All right.
And I would argue it's decided a lot earlier than that most years, because Georgia has been smacking that division for a long time, and Alabama has as well, right? I mean, how many of the Western Division champs are not Alabama, period? So we would know, talk about like in 2016, 17, like we would know about a month into the season, well, Bama is smoking everybody, and like it would take some wild stuff happening.
We, going into this weekend, have 7 teams in the SEC that have 1 or fewer conference losses. So that's like almost half the conference. What people who said, well, these games won't mean anything, dismissed was how significant these conference title races now become, because we're going to get all of these conference games in November that have really significant implications for being able to get to Atlanta and having that path without knowing, well, will it come down to this tiebreaker? Will it come down to this tiebreaker? Did we have this head-to-head matchup with this team? You just don't even know at this stage of the game. So,
and in the offseason, you were doing the Charlie in the mailroom conspiracy theory stuff, and it's played out right in front of our eyes.
It's going to come down to
so right about that.
It's
because look at this. I mean,
Yes.
look at this. Like, you know, the one-loss teams, right? Like, Mizzou is among them. Guess who is not? University of Alabama. How could we have foreseen this?
Vandy.
You know what I'm saying?
Vandy
is among them. You know what I'm saying? So, like, at the end of the day, it's like they have lost to Georgia State, but not Georgia yet. And so, point being, you know, we are in this weird scenario where it's like, wow, head-to-head is, like, going to be pretty hard to ascertain, because like, we have 2 undefeated teams that, of the big wins, quote-unquote, is Mizzou and Ole Miss, and that's it in the SEC.
And you don't have these paths that are going to be blocked in the typical way. And there's just a lot more chaos that can happen. And so you've got fan bases, you're like, all right, should I be rooting for this team or this team? This team has a path. And, but wait, if they're there with 1 loss, then we would have the advantage over them. There's just a lot more of that. And this is the first time that we talked about when we did the tiebreaker episode in the offseason. We tried to do the SEC's job for itself. Came up a little bit short in that. But nonetheless, this is the first time in which we have an SEC championship without divisions. And so deciding it this way, I think we will see this intrigue, and it kind of begins with this game. And then moving forward, look at all these matchups in November that are going to have significant SEC championship implications that we otherwise wouldn't have had in a division formula. So here for all of that. Should be an awesome, awesome game. I was talking with my guys on the next round. Biggest game at Kyle Field since the Manziel Bama 2.0, 2013. You know, like I think that is very much very much the billing for this one. So great showcase game for Mike Elko in year 1. All right. Other game that's got teams in the SEC with 1 or few conference losses. Just as everyone predicted, Texas's first SEC road trip will be to a top 25 Vandy team. How about it? Number 5 Texas, 18.5-point favorites against number 25, your Vanderbilt Commodores. The over-under I have for this one, Will, is 12 third down conversions for Vandy. Why'd I pick that number? You know why? That's what happened the last time Vandy hosted a top 5 team. Also, over under 0.5 goalposts that make their way into the Cumberland River. I didn't realize that was 3 miles, Will. 3 miles.
That's a trek. I mean, that's a lot of pain and suffering being extinguished over the course. I mean, that's a CrossFit workout by the time. Yeah.
Can you imagine waking up on Sunday? Oh, babe, I'm sore. I carried those goalposts 3 miles. We had dudes doing a 5K while holding goalposts out of a stadium to dump into a river.
Hammered out of their minds. Feel like they just played an NFL game. They're hungover. Their muscles are sore. They're like, what did I do last night?
Oh, yeah, the goalpost. That's right.
Yeah. They look like their memories at Instagram. They're like, wow, I really yeeted that goalpost. I was like going after it. Yeah.
How does the fishing of the goalposts work? They know it's in the river. Someone has to fish that out. Someone, for the sake of the health of the river. I don't mean to go full environmentalist here, but someone is on dispatch getting that call going, the goalposts are in the river. Yeah, bring the crane. We'll get it figured out. Luckily for Vandy, cranes all over Nashville. They're everywhere, man. They are absolutely everywhere. Not so lucky for Vandy. Texas's third down defense is just a touch better than the last time a top 5 team went into Nashville. Texas, even after the Georgia game, 10th in America in opposing third down percentage, though that number a little bit different in conference play because Mississippi State, of all teams, had 8 third down conversions against Texas. But that is what defined that Alabama loss against Vandy. That Alabama defense grew immensely frustrated that it couldn't get off the field to its own detriment. And the longer you let Diego Pavia hang around, as I always say, that's bad news bears. It just is. The guy that's got 3 upsets as a 3-touchdown underdog, you do not want that guy feeling confident late in the game or feeling like he's got nothing to lose late in the game. Also, Texas
real
offense.
Quick on that, bro. What are we? This 19-point line. I mean, I feel like it's like how many times do we have to teach you this lesson, old man? Like, I don't know. Texas, is a team that again they've had great wins. I was all over them before the Georgia game. I get it. I'm not doing revisionist history here, but it's a team that has didn't look great against Mississippi State, for instance. Like it's not like they're known for blowing teams out in this way. And nobody's blowing out Diego Pavia. He'll go across the sideline and fight Bevo before he lets that happen. He will finish the game.
It's true. Look, Mizzou 3-point win, double overtime. Georgia State throw of the year to win that game in the final minute. Look, nobody blows out Diego Pavia, especially not in his own building. I think Texas's offense badly needs to find some rhythm. Mm-hmm. And to do that, they need their third down defense to be on point, and they need to be able to control the line of scrimmage and figure out who it is coming off of this Georgia game. Because, they had some nice drives in that Georgia game in the second half. Second half was much better than a first half in which they gained 38 yards. 38 yards. Yeah. First half of this one, I think, will be better. It simply has to be better. The good news for Texas is that while my college floor mate, not roommate, college floor mate, Larry Black, shout out Indiana, one of many shout outs to Indiana this episode, he's doing an excellent job coaching up that Vandy defensive line. Bad news for him, he doesn't have Jalen Walker to turn to. Jalen Walker ain't walking through that door. Even if yours is not exactly seeing the field with 20/20 vision, there's greater margin for error for that Texas offense against a Vandy defense that's second to last in the SEC, which is 14 sacks. I don't know if it's necessarily angry Texas that we see, but I sure as heck know that hungover Texas cannot take that field. If it takes that field, we're talking Diego Pavia statues status. Not one statue, multiple statues. You beat 2 top 5 teams in that place. We're talking stadium naming rights. All right, we're going to forego the donor that's thinking about cutting that check, and we're just going to name it Pavia Place or something like that. All right. I don't necessarily think that happens. I refuse to pick a Texas blowout just because picking against Diego Pavia to cover the spread seems really foolish, even though I might have got burned by that last week with lock of the week. We'll get to that later. I'm going to go 31-17 Longhorns. Vandy covers, but it's a struggle offensively at times for Vandy with Pavia perhaps not at 100% coming off of that lower body injury, however you want to chalk it up, knee injury in the Kentucky game.
Yeah, I'm trying, or not trying. I found the stat that I sent you, which is so fascinating about EPA per play. That's another advanced metric that just kind of looks at every play. And dude, it's so funny for quarterbacks in the SEC because Diego Pavia is like head and shoulders above everybody else. Like he's kind of in a tier by himself. It's got like a 0.6 difference. And then there's kind of just like this tier of mid plus, which is Milroe, who's obviously trending down. Like a lot of that work was done early in the season. This is just against SEC competition, right? So he started off pretty hot in SEC competition and then has gotten worse and worse. Nussmeier, who is kind of on the up and up, and another, he's tied with Milroe, but the other metric they're using as a tiebreaker is average offensive grade, which LSU can't run the ball, and Alabama can do it a little bit better, so that's pretty much the reason there. And then we have like Carson Beck, and funny enough, Arch Manning. So I say that to say, then there's a massive drop-off. I think this is like what do you believe? Like, do you believe your how you think things go or how they're actually going? Yeah, dude, Diego Pavia is actually like, this is not a bit. He's way better than everyone this year. And so I'm right there with you. I'm not necessarily going to pick them to upset Texas. Like, I'm not going to go swing the complete other way and just say whatever. The reason why I won't pick that is because at the end of the day, it's going to be about Vanderbilt's defense. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think we are getting a deep preview about Vanderbilt. What a time to be alive.
Love it.
I'm like, yeah. So point being, it's going to be about Vanderbilt's defense because at the end of the day, I mean, Georgia's defense just completely, neutered the Longhorns as like a Mississippi State coach once did. And so point being, there wasn't even anything to that game outside of that. Like we talked about, Carson Beck had 3 picks, but the Texas offense had 4 horrible turnovers. I mean, just like the Georgia should have beaten them by 30
Texas
or 40
defense
points.
played well. They played well in that game. I go to bat and say that. Not a perfect game, but not a game in which all of a sudden you said to yourself, "Wow, Texas got exposed by the Georgia offense." Like their scoring possessions in the first half were like their touchdown drives were the 34-yard line of Texas or better, and then they had like a field goal drive from Georgia's own 45. But it wasn't like up until that march down the field after the chaos had ensued. That was really the only time that game in which you said, the Texas defense just did not quite get it done.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% with you. It's one of those things, like, I'm not saying this to detract from Georgia. I'm saying this because it makes it a much funnier point about Texas, which is that we both like the Texas defense going into this game. We weren't necessarily wrong. Despite the horrors, the Texas defense actually played pretty well and, again, turned them over 3 total times. I'd go check fumbles real quick, but they turned them over 3 total times. They did enough to make it look good on paper if you didn't watch that game for whatever reason, if you were crazy. But, that game does not – the final score does not indicate how that game was played, and all that was just the Texas defense. So I say that to say, it's going to come down to the Vandy defense making Quinn Ewers work and make those costly turnovers, because I think that, it's not like we've seen like Diego Pavia versus the Texas defense is going to be a great showdown. Like, as insane as that sounds, I think it's going to be a good one, but it's really going to fundamentally fall on the Vandy defense, because we've seen a Texas offense go from, they sputtered at times. Good.
It's best defense that Diego Pavia's faced without a doubt. Think about it.
Yeah.
Georgia State, impressive.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech, a lot of experience back on that group for a defense-minded head coach. It's easily the best defense that Diego Pavia has faced. And what I wonder about, his favorite target, Eli Stowers, former A&M quarterback, former New Mexico State quarterback, turned tight end, who's become an all-SEC type player this year. He really has. He's been awesome. He's part of that New Mexico State migration. Stick Anthony Hill Jr. on that guy for a game, because I know you would typically say elite tight end with a linebacker on you, advantage elite tight end. Anthony Hill Jr. is different. And I am very curious if our guy PK is going to make that decision to say, I'm just going to stick my best player on his best weapon and hope that kind of takes care of it. Bama didn't really have a guy that could do that. Vandy's run into a lot of teams that didn't really have a guy that could stick on him. And I'm curious if that's kind of the plan. Not quite a full-on shadow. You don't want to do that with Anthony Hill. He's too good at getting into the backfield. And you want to take away that part of his game. But I am interested if that is kind of the strategy, and if that's the thing that can make this more of a challenge than it's been for Diego Pavia.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, it's one thing, like, Alabama has some incredibly talented players on defense. That's the thing. Now, they have no idea how to utilize them some of the times, as ask Malachi Moore, but they have the personnel. That's the funny thing about Alabama. They could figure this out tomorrow if they wanted to. So I'm right there with you. And when it becomes, okay, they lost their receivers coming into the year, when you actually have 5-star athletes that are actually where they're supposed to be, then that depth becomes a problem, because now you got a guy who's like smarter than both of us and could do his own taxes, try to catch passes against Texas. The guy's going to be in the NFL in 2 years. So anyway, I say that to say I'm with you. Like, it's going to be a very interesting chess match on both sides, because I think the Texas defense is still very good, and Diego Pavia is that dude. So we could say this is the best quarterback in the SEC. That's fine. Him going against what we still think is probably the best defense in the SEC. Strength
on strength, baby.
Yeah. And again, not dumping on Georgia. Y'all leave me alone. They had a great game. Okay. The Vanderbilt game also happened. The State game, let's put a couple together before we can say that. So I say that to say, on the other side of it, we have Quinn Ewers, who has looked solid. He's looked great against some teams. He's gotten injured. He's not been whatever. But, the Vandy defense needs to step up, because they have, this Texas offense can be exposed, but when they get on a roll, they look unstoppable. And I'm not saying they've just forgotten how to do that, because Georgia just completely sunned them for 60 minutes.
I'm at the point now, Will, where you talk about Diego Pavia, best quarterback in the SEC. If someone says that, and if I'm the judge, sustained. sustained.
It's statistically true. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, it's a joke that he plays for Vandy. He's like small. We get it. But like, based on what we've seen on the field, almost beating Mizzou and beating Alabama convincingly is awesome. And he did that. Like,
I'm probably like, if you're giving me a full game and equal weapons and all that stuff, and that's obviously really difficult to do, I'm probably taking Nuss, but I'm also not hating on anyone for taking Diego Pavia. If you want to run that type of offense, and if you can do the things that Tim Beck has done, again, different Tim Beck that we've talked about a million times.
Yeah.
The one who's on the other side of 60, who spent most of his career in the MIAA, which is like the SEC of Division II football. People forget that. Spent a few decades at Pittsburgh State. Not where you think it is.
The Gorillas stand up.
Yeah, let's go. How about that? Wow. Yeah, back in my days, Nebraska, University of Nebraska Kearney, would see that logo whenever I'd go into the building and be like, buddy, we're talking about the Gorillas. Love it. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, Tim Beck. Yeah, if Diego Pavia does it against this Texas defense, I am banging the drum. I am shouting from the mountaintops. I'm not getting a tattoo just yet because that's something that we can't turn back. But I'm doing a lot of very permanent things for the Diego Pavia for Heisman campaign. I am.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. We could move on after this. Is this the Cinderella story? Is this March Madness when the team beats Kentucky? Or is this like Butler, where it's like, oh, you guys have smacked 3 more teams. Hold on, we actually feel bad picking against you now. And it's like same deal here. Like, what was it, Loyola Chicago a couple years ago? It's like, oh no, you guys are now beating 2 and 3 and 4 Blue Bloods. They're coming back the next year doing the same thing. Is Diego Pavia, because he's looking to be like, one of my coworkers went to Auburn. I was like, he's looking to be 3-0 against the SEC or against the state of Alabama this year. Like
2008 Steph Curry Davidson.
That's a great one. That's the one right there. It's like, oh, that's a cute story. Like, oh wait, he's actually this good. Hold on,
he's actually this good. Maybe not getting to the Final Four, maybe not doing those things, but I'm just saying, if Vandy wins this game against Texas, and Vandy is still going into November, having already clinched bowl eligibility, which, by the way, never done that in program history, reached bowl eligibility before November. I went back and looked it up because I'm a sicko. And the fact that we're talking about Diego Pavia for Heisman Trophy, God, what a year that would be. Unfortunately for Vandy, I don't think it happens. And I do think that Texas ultimately gets the last laugh. But what a great showdown it's going to be in Nashville. Would have been a great site for College game day. I'm okay with where they ended up, in my unbiased opinion.
Yep.
A lot of
did you have final score?
Yeah, I went with Texas 31, Vandy 17. Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. All right. Oklahoma, Ole Miss, number 18 Ole Miss. People forget they're still ranked. They are. Ole Miss is a 20.5 point favorite. The over-under I have for this one is 4.3 Oklahoma yards per play. That's actually not a shot at Marcus Satterfield, who was asked what his goal is for yards per play as the Nebraska offensive coordinator. And he's like, I don't even know, like somewhere between 4 and 6. And then Buddy didn't even realize that the second worst team in FBS is just a hair above 4 yards per play. I'm sure somebody's going to give Marcus Satterfield some more money to do this job. I don't know why. Somebody will, because maybe we need to put Marcus Satterfield in the Ryan Bamford category of dudes that talk other dudes into doing crazy things. Yep. But that's, I guess, a different subject for a different time.
He's just like me trying to add up field goals. He's like, hold on, I feel like a good play is about 5 yards, right? Question mark.
How can you be an offensive coordinator in the year of our Lord 2024 and not know yards per play and what's good and what's not? What are we doing?
Brian Ferris is like, come on, bro. Even I know that. I'm not getting there, but I know my goal.
Seriously, he knows what's bad. He knows what's historically awful and what people use to make fun of him. Golly, that was such a bad look. Oh, fire him on the spot. Don't even let him get off the podium with that crap. I hated that. I think I retweeted 2 different things from that. All right. I brought up 4.3 Oklahoma yards per play because that's what they're averaging this year. Well, that is basura. Basura. That is also why Seth Littrell lasted half a season as Oklahoma's offensive coordinator, and then he got the boot on Sunday. First SEC coordinator firing. Welcome to the SEC.
Welcome Oklahoma. To the SEC. You guys thought we were crazy, and here you are fired your OC, and we're like 5-6 games into the conference slate.
It is the second time that Oklahoma has fired an offensive coordinator who played on that 2000 national championship team. So one has to think now, naturally, Seth Littrell is going to come back to Norman 10 years from now and beat Oklahoma with College game day in the house. That's how this works. History has suggested. I do think Seth Littrell's a good coach. Mm-hmm. I talked about in the offseason, that guy ran a North Texas program that's not even a top 10 job in the state of Texas, and I didn't think he deserved to be fired.
Yeah.
So I hope that guy lands on his feet because I do think that he is better than what this season would suggest. I don't think it was a good situation for anyone. Obviously, he didn't handle it well enough to be able to survive this year. It's pretty wild, though, that through 4 SEC games, Brent Venables has made 2 in-game quarterback changes, and he fired his OC that quickly. Life comes at
Does
you
that count
fast.
as meddling?
If
If it's broken, you can't do worse than that. So I don't think that's exactly meddling.
Yeah, it's borderline. It's borderline.
It's shades of Coach O gets Ole Miss, where later was like, you were just running cover 3 the whole time. What was that?
Yeah. Can we talk about this opening real quick? Because I think it's one of the top assistant openings in college football.
Yeah.
I really do. It's like, think about it from this perspective. You get full autonomy working with Brent Venables, who's a defensive-minded head coach. You get the history of Oklahoma quarterbacks, obviously, top 10 recruiting classes, a coach that's going to spend in the portal. And perhaps the most important thing, you've got this recent history of unbelievable Oklahoma offenses and Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks, number 1 overall picks, all those things. That bar has been lowered so low that nobody, and I mean nobody, is going to expect you to come in and start cranking out Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray offenses. Nobody. Like, it's crazy.
You know who might be available?
Name a name, Will.
Lincoln Riley. Call him up. Be like, hey, look, you got to make friends. That's your number 1 goal. So you got to come back here because where are you going to go now?
I was going to do a minute video of this and name like my list of candidates because, by the way, I've got a full list of candidates on SaturdayDownSouth.com that people can go check out if they want to see all my thoughts on that. But I was going to do like a minute-long video and then end it with, there's this guy in Southern California. Things haven't gone particularly well this year. He's got kind of an aging quarterback. I think they should give Sean McVay a call. Just see what he's up to.
That's incredible.
Didn't do it though. Didn't do it. Probably should have. But yeah, the guy that I'd be calling if I were Oklahoma is Kirby Moore. I think Kirby Moore, the Mizzou offensive coordinator, would be a great fit for this job. Don't know if that's going to be in the cards for him. Don't know what his aspirations are. It's kind of an early 30s something guy. I think even Mizzou fans have accepted there's a very likely scenario that this is his last year at Mizzou with the great things that he has in store. And even though it's been a little bit more disappointing, I still think he would be coveted in a job like that. So we'll kind of wait and see. In the meantime, this Oklahoma offense will turn to Joe John Finley. Yeah, that's right. It's a great name. It's a great name. You see it every once in a while that was thrown out there because he had playing career, obviously, and spent some time in the NFL. But Joe John Finley is just a fun name to say over and over again. Maybe that's why Brent Venables made the move. He's like, you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Joe John, vibes, just whatever we could do to improve this situation. Let's bring in Joe John, see if he can do this. They're going to be turning to him as the OC. They're turning back to Jackson Arnold as the quarterback. So maybe a change of scenery is going to clean things up. But here's what this feels like. When you're on a plane and you experience turbulence, right? Like you get that feeling you're kind of on edge a little bit. It's, I don't know, like 5-10 minutes. And you get those first few seconds where things kind of calm down and it feels like, all right, we're okay. Then the captain gets on the speaker and he says, there's actually a lot more turbulence on the way. Buckle in. Don't get out of your seats. That's how I would compare this Oklahoma offense transitioning from the South Carolina defensive line to the Ole Miss defensive line. A lot of turbulence could be on the way. It will not be a smooth ride on Saturday. Not sure that they forced 3 turnovers in the first 5 minutes like South Carolina did, but also slightly terrified for this Oklahoma offensive line that they're going to have to protect Ole Miss coming off of a bye, where they'll be getting even healthier. We're doing this before injury reports, TBD on Princely Uman-Mielen, which guys are going to be available, but I think they got enough dudes to get after the passer. I think the only hope for Oklahoma is that the version of Ole Miss that we saw against Kentucky shows up. Or Trey Harris's ankle is maybe not quite at 100%, and Jackson Dart doesn't have his go-to target at full strength.
You hope Trey Harris wakes up with a tummy ache if you're an Oklahoma fan,
like he's in-game illness. I don't know, but I can't pick an Oklahoma team that's averaging 13.5 points in SEC play. And if you actually want to get into the real number and take off the 8 points that they got via the pick 6 and 2-point conversion against Auburn, it's 11.5 points per SEC game that Oklahoma is averaging. Not good. Hard to see that improving against an Ole Miss defense that's top 3 in the country, both in yards per play allowed and scoring. and just behind South Carolina with 24 sacks on the year. So I'm going Ole Miss 28, Oklahoma 6.
I think it is objectively so funny that the other day I said Jermaine Gresham ain't walking through that door, and in fact, their new offensive lineman is his backup, Joe Johnson.
How about that? How about that?
I'm like, I remember this guy. This isn't talking about some dude's guy.
Yeah.
This is the guy with the flow.
Like Jim Bob Cooter, Joe John Finley, like these triple names that are just fun to say.
I think my advice for the Oklahoma is they should probably stop hiring all offensive or all coaches that went to Oklahoma. I think you can get some guys from
Brent
other
Venables
schools.
didn't, though. We made that mistake in the offseason.
Yeah.
Brent Venables, not an Oklahoma grad.
No, you're right.
That's on us. So they've gone away from the Oklahoma family, if you want to call it that. Shout out Brian
come
Kelly.
on, bro. That was unnecessary. Anyway, yeah, I'm with you. I think that Lane, again, I hate to do the is Lane serious check every week, but this is a pretty good checkout because this is an Oklahoma team that will beat themselves. Lane Kiffin has been shown to be a pretty opportunistic coach. I think that, if you kind of shoot yourself in the foot against Lane Kiffin, like we kind of saw South Carolina do early, Oklahoma's apt to do that, even against South Carolina. So that's kind of my whole analysis here is that Lane Kiffin is, say what you will, historically pretty good at capitalizing on mistakes, and boy, will Oklahoma make some mistakes. And again, I'm 100% with you. I don't really, their OC situation is just unwinnable because we've, talked about it ad nauseum. The amount of skill position guys that are just in and out of the lineup, the quarterback situation, you just really can't properly manage it. But you also, in the SEC, just have to fire your offensive coordinator when you're at the position they're in. Just to have some hopium, just so people start calling for the head coach to say, look, we're doing something here. At least we've, put in our boy, Joe John Finley. So point being, I think this should be kind of a blowout for Ole Miss. And if it's not, then we start asking fun questions.
Oklahoma fans are down so bad right now that I think the best pickup they could get is if a receiver who has plenty of eligibility left, who is currently not playing, announces he's coming back for another year. That would be the ultimate morale boost for Oklahoma at this stage of the game with how desolate that position has been with their injuries. If they got an announcement from Nick Anderson running it back next year, you're like, buddy, it's late October. You're a redshirt sophomore. What are we doing here? Why do we need? But at the same time, we'll take it. Oh God, we just need something to feel good about the future of Oklahoma offense because they're not used to feeling like this. They are not used to feeling like they are lacking those answers, and it's tough when you're like, all right, do we have a quarterback? Do we have a guy that we can build around? Are we going to have to go to the portal? Are we going to have these receivers back? What are we going to do on the offensive line? Who's our coordinator? All of these questions are being asked, and I don't think they're going to be answered in this final month of the season with the schedule that awaits Oklahoma. There are going to be some turbulent times ahead for that group. Oklahoma defense, yes, led the all dudes who deserve better team. Yeah.
Well, you know what, though? I think you're underestimating how much Oklahoma fans like to slander the University of Texas. So I think they're actually having one of the better weeks of the season because the rest. Because look, the thing that Oklahoma fans have told us,
and Lincoln Riley as well. Lincoln Riley,
exactly. It's like, look, we're slandering Lincoln Riley. He's doing terrible. And what Oklahoma fans will always tell you is, doesn't matter how down we are, doesn't matter what Texas is. They'll find a way. And right now they're looking pretty right here where it's like, hey, look, we know we're bad. That's like where I'm at, where I've been with LSU, where it's like, LSU's not any good this year. So I'm going to just be a hater this year. And it's like, hey, once you've accepted that your team is trash, it's the most liberating thing in the world. Like you could just go root against your rivals and not care. It's like, yeah, Texas beat us. I don't care. Their goals are a national championship. They have quit yours. We don't even have a quarterback.
3 boxes that Oklahoma fans want to check the rest of the season. Receiver announcements. I'm running it back. USC going 5-7. And Texas somehow missing the college football playoff. Those are the 3 boxes that Oklahoma fans are like, God, just give me that.
If Texas loses to Vanderbilt, they're like, you know what? We'll pack this one in. We can lose the rest of them. We've had enough. We're good. We've had a good season. At least they're not winning.
Yeah. All right. Number 21, Mizzou. Number 15, Alabama. Alabama is a 14-point favorite. The over-under I have for this one, Will, is 82 Alabama penalty yards. That's what they're averaging. Connor? That's what they're averaging in SEC play. 4 SEC games are averaging 82 penalty yards per game. You're basically giving away a touchdown a game. Okay? You want to think about it like that? You're giving away 7 points by doing that. Hard to win games consistently when you're giving away that many yards. Hard to have an offensive script when you do that. And I'm not sure that it's because everyone is worried about effing TikTok, as AJ McCarron alleged on McCready and Siski. Okay. I'm not a TikTok guy. So I can't provide the breakdown of teams that are worried about TikTok versus the teams that aren't worried about TikTok. I think there are a couple that come to mind, maybe one of which we just talked about not so long ago that you would probably put in that camp. That I can't be the person that confirms or denies that. All right, that's all I'm saying. What's very clear, what's undeniable, is that Alabama is undisciplined. Alabama is scattered. Nobody talks about how Alabama was bottom 20 in the country in penalty yards per game, both in 2021 and 2022. They were getting penalties left and right. We were talking about it, I felt like, on a weekly basis.
We were, yeah. I was about to say, we talked about it.
But it does feel like a very convenient, that would never happen under Saban. And while you could certainly argue certain penalties wouldn't necessarily fly, and the whole Malachi Moore thing against Vandy, like you can talk about that and how that wouldn't fly, I totally get it. But it was a big reason why Alabama in 22 lost 2 regular season games. And then Saban is up there arguing for his team to make the playoff, even though he's well aware that his team's best win is against a bunch of 4-loss teams, and his team has no business being in the 4-team playoff. He was still doing it. But I digress. When you lose, we associate it with why you're losing.
Yep.
That's the problem. People don't realize SMU could end up getting to the ACC championship, and they're actually averaging more penalty yards per game than Alabama, but nobody's talking about that. It's wow. Look at what SMU's doing. Year 1 in the ACC. How about that?
Dallas. Cowboy hats, big money, penalties.
I watched Pony Excess again last week.
So good, dude.
I think it's my favorite 30 for 30. It's so freaking good, man. I absolutely love it. But it is kind of funny to watch it in the NIL era and watch a different perspective. Go back and watch it with that in mind. Yeah, you're just like, they're freaking out over $700. Buddy, the backup left tackle is getting that.
Carson Beck has a Lamborghini, and Jackson Dart has a private jet deal.
Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers have the private jet deal as well. And we're sitting here talking about, we don't need to get into that. But here's the thing. Alabama's discipline is beyond what's flagged and what's not. I think discipline is a very general, broad word to describe what's currently wrong with this team. I think it goes beyond even taking care of the assignment in a given play. You could argue these coaches need more discipline. We talked a lot about the defensive issues and all that, but I mean, going into the Tennessee game, Kalen DeBoer gets up there and he's like, we need to get Jam Miller and Justice Haynes more involved in the rushing attack. You know how many carries those guys got in the final 13:56 after Bama takes the lead in the game against Tennessee? 2. They got 2 carries. And I know they have screen pass.
It's the Garfield meme with like, I wonder who that's for. It's like, my brother in Christ, you're Kalen DeBoer. Just put them in the game.
I know, and that's the thing. If you're going to be the head coach that's going to delegate play calling duties like he does, then that's the type of thing that you have to be on top of. And you can't use that as like, man, I guess we just didn't get that done. No, you have to take care of that personnel stuff because that's like 2022 early season Luther Burden with drink, with his usage that we were talking about. Speaking of Mizzou, bring it all back. They're playing in this football game too. Brady,
hold on. Because I was going to say, you know, what's so funny about this is like, you know, I've more or less moved to it because the Bama thing is like interesting and then I want to see it play out. Like we've talked about it, bro. Like literally it just came well because whatever. And it's funny, just so you guys don't think I'm out here just slandering Alabama, you know, Marler called me today. I'm like, hey man, are you going to the LSU-Bama game? Because I know that he does a lot of work in Louisiana and everything. And he said something to the effect of, I don't know, man, we're out there shooting jump shots on 4th and 1. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Did you see this? And Marler's like, yeah, dude, I'll send you the clip. Like there were the 2 receivers on that tush.
Williams and Bernard were shooting jump shots.
And they were jump shots. I'm like, this is all news to me. This is the first time I'm hearing this. And you start off the thing, you're like, Alabama, 82 penalty yards and this, but I'm like, wow, these are all new facts to me. I'm just living my life. So this is interesting. People are just walking up to me and telling me what's wrong with Alabama.
That was the first time in which I thought all across the board the lack of discipline was evident, and it's top down. It's not even just a specific unit. It's not just a specific player, and that to me was most troubling if I'm an Alabama fan. I'm interested if Brady Cook has his full arsenal. I expect him to play in this game. I definitely expect him to play in this game. If that man played in a game in which he spent a chunk of it in the hospital, he's not missing an opportunity to lead a 1-loss Mizzou team in Tuscaloosa. All right? I know we're doing this before availability reports come out. I'll go on record saying I feel good about that, okay? But what I worry about for Mizzou's sake is despite what Cook did down the stretch against another team from Alabama last week, I don't know that Cook's legs will be a weapon in this. And with those accuracy issues that he's dealt with this year, that would worry me. there will be times in this game in which I think Brady Cook sees a running lane that normally it's 3rd and 8, and he could pick that up with his legs, and he keeps the drive alive, he keeps the chains moving, and he just can't quite get around the corner and get that in the way that he usually does. And I think that's important in a game like this. I still think Mizzou should be pretty effective in the ground game with Noel and Carroll, with those guys back healthy. If I'm Kirby Moore, I'm trying to tap into what Tennessee did down the stretch with Dylan Sampson. I'm not saying that Marcus Carroll is exactly like Dylan Sampson. I'm not saying anybody on this earth is like Dylan Sampson at the college level. Okay. Ashton Jensen might be. Ashton Jensen.
I was about to say, I don't think that's fair. That guy's better. Like,
I'm not saying that anyone outside of the state of Boise is like Dylan Sampson. All right.
State of Boise.
State of Idaho. I know Boise's not a state.
I know. You know. Yeah.
I think some of that frustrates Bama in this one. So I'll take Mizzou to cover plus 14. I think 14 is too many, but I'll take Bama to win, kind of like a down to the wire, need a defensive stop late type of game. I'll take Bama to win 31-24.
So you gotta. This is just let's consider it. Just say devil's advocate here, because we saw in the you remember the Mizzou LSU game last year where Jaden Daniels took that hit, and I was like, I think he's dead. I think he just broke 2 ribs. And he came back in the game and led them to a comeback. And Brady Cook just had his version of that last week, right? The hospital stay is fascinating to me because it almost has to be a little bit of the Paul Pierce wheelchair thing, right? Because
no way. The Paul Pierce wheelchair thing was he had to go to the bathroom.
I know. I'm not saying you had to go to the bathroom. I'm just saying, maybe if you hang around drink that long, even if you're going to the hospital, brother, and then you're checking back in the same game, to your point, you're probably fine the next week. That means there was a little bit of theatrics in my mind because you either need to stay in the hospital or you need to be in the football game, but you don't need to go, he's okay.
I don't know the logistics of it. Brady Cook confirmed that he was indeed in the hospital, and he talked about he wasn't missing this game. So this isn't a drink Theo Weiss situation at Texas A&M with sending
I'm just
him a
saying,
blanket.
from Cook's perspective, if you hang out with drink for that long, it's like, I got to get the boys going. I got to walk out of the hospital.
It works.
Like, I'm ready to lead the boys to I'm going to be out here. I'm going to die on this field. And they're like, oh, my God, we're going to catch everything, Brady. We're on your side. It worked. Whatever he did, it worked. That's all they're saying.
For all I know, they kept him in a broom closet and found some tape. And they're like, just go to the indoor, test it out. We're going to see how your ankle is. Well, we're going to keep you in here for a little bit. Drew Pine, another incompletion. All right, come out.
All right, you're out. Yeah, we got to do we're moving up that act. Yeah. So point being, I hope the guy's okay. I'm not kidding here. Like, I hope he's okay. I hope he wasn't legitimately like I had something wrong and he was like pushing off medical doctors and running back to the stadium in his pads because that's wild. That's like anime style. Anyway, so point being, I'm right there with you. In terms of I think Bama actually probably looks pretty good in this game. I think Alabama has an opportunistic defense. We kind of talked about that a little bit. They don't have necessarily a good defense, but this is a Mizzou offense that just hasn't exactly been clicking when you have the talent that Alabama has and you have the playmakers that Alabama has, which they certainly do. You know what I'm saying? I don't think that there's going to be some when Bama has struggled, there has just been some obvious problem. It's been oh, you can't block Kennard. You can't believe you have Diego Pavia is just going to convert 1,000,000 third downs on you. It becomes evident really quickly. And I'm trying to find that thing that Mizzou can do on that level. Because I think that they can't exactly use Luther Burden correctly at this point. So it's not they just can't locate Luther Burden. They can't communicate. There's your answer, right? I mean, if they could get Luther Burden effectively utilized and move him around the field where Bama has to communicate, because Bama, as we've talked about when they've struggled, it's been a little bit of the man assignment and the mixing man and zone and the communication between the players. So
Malachi Moore would be the guy that would be following him all over the place, I would imagine.
And that's a guy that technically has the talent to do that. You know what I'm saying? So I'm if they don't get creative with his usage the way that we saw last year and we're just single covering him, they technically do have a guy who could do that. So I think that it really is going to come down to Burton's usage. And I'm not discounting Mizzou. I was really high on Mizzou earlier this season. The A&M game obviously gave me a little bit of pause. But again, this is a team that, like we were talking about, they're a one-loss team. They do, in the SEC, they do control their destiny. I think that, it really just comes down to that usage. But I think Alabama is going to cover the spread pretty much. I think they're going to go ahead and just because I'm trying to find that strength, and it'll be apparent from the jump. And it has been with Alabama, so we'll be able to see. But Mizzou just can't really we didn't adjust at all against A&M, so I don't think they have the willpower to do that.
The run game could be a definite strength for Mizzou in this one. Just kind of depends though. What if game flow early on doesn't really favor that? You can't necessarily get those guys going and kind of get their legs under them in the way that you would like to and find that sort of rhythm. It's just it is a little bit difficult to envision this Mizzou offense playing in what would have to be its best game of the year.
Oh, you know what? It's easy, bro. I hate to trivialize it to this. if last year's Mizzou team were to show up to this game, they would win it, I think, easily. Because when you think about the run game, Brady Cook being decisive, using their legs, if Brady Cook can use his legs, that takes away an element of the run game. If they can't effectively lift their bread around like they did last year, which was effective, so it's simple. What do you want to be, Mizzou? To let me know.
With Blake Baker as your DC, dialing up unique blitz packages for Jalen Milroe. Yeah, there are a lot of elements of this team last year that you would look at and go, man, this would actually be setting up really well. But they have not really tapped into that. Maybe they will in this one. It feels like a playoff elimination game of sorts because I know Mizzou fans won't want to hear this, but I think even a 10-2 Mizzou team would probably get left out without a top 25 team left on that schedule. It would at least get murky. Mizzou wants to avoid that second loss with the schedule and the way that it's set up. Best Mizzou win is double overtime against Vandy. All right. Pretty good win.
Ryan Manfred's on his way to your house right now.
Is that the door? Is that the door?
It's too late.
Oh, okay. We're talking some Ryan Bamford with Adam Breneman as well.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's do Arkansas, 6.5 point favorite against Mississippi State. Over under I have is 2 references to the worst football game in human history between these teams last year. Anything more is just cruel and unusual, right? I don't watch those videos that are, like people getting tortured or something like that. The algorithm is all over that as well. I stay away from that stuff, and I try and stay away from games like this. Do not tell me, listener of this show, that you enjoyed that 7-3 train wreck last year. I don't care how defensive-minded you are. Oh, it's throwback. No. This game was not that. It was not. Well, I almost didn't even want to look back at the box score of this one because I was going to have flashbacks and I was going to be so mad at myself for the 3.5 hours that I spent with time on this earth watching this game. And that makes me sad to think about. It really does. 405 combined yards of offense. Neither quarterback had 100 passing yards. They combined for 6 for 27 on third down. There were 14 total punts. Even Iowa fans were like, it's kind of a lot of punts. It's a good amount of punts. Mississippi State had a backup punter in at one point. I'm pretty sure that the starter was just gassed. So you got it. Yeah.
He was in the wheelchair like Paul Pierce.
Go figure that the guy on the losing end of this game last year is the guy that's still employed. And the guy who won this game, Zach Arnett, is an analyst right now. Sam Pittman needs this one badly. Badly, because if you lose this, suddenly people are very quickly forgetting about what you did against Tennessee a couple weeks ago. If you lose this to a Mississippi State team that's improving, but still 1-5, smacked in their own building against Toledo, that is really, really bad optics for Sam Pittman. If you lose to this team, here's the dubious stat. Mississippi State currently has 1 SEC win since the death of Mike Leach. It was the aforementioned 7-3 game. If they get to number 2,
sorry, you have these stats that just punched me in the mouth. That is 1 since then, and it's that game. Goodness.
Yeah. And they beat Illinois in the bowl game. Bowl game that I was there for. Great time. Nice lovely day down in Tampa. Thought this was the beginning of something kind of unique with Zach Arnett. I was wrong. They are searching for their first FBS win of the Jeff Lebby era. I definitely think with how well Michael Van Buren, not a disciple of the former president until we get a confirmed DNA test, I think that with how well he's been playing, that it's on the table that Mississippi State wins this game. I do not think that is crazy at all. But I think this is why you hire someone like Bobby Petrino. Not just because you're desperate, but because Robert Patrick still has it, and you need someone that can dial up some looks on the outside, which last year, obviously, Dan Enos could not do that. He was fired after this game. That was very evident quickly into this one. Arkansas should have some of those advantages on the outside. Andrew Armstrong is developing into an all-SEC type receiver. He finally got his first receiving touchdown of the year. That happened last week against LSU. But guy's currently top 3 in the conference in both catches and yards. He's been great. One of those guys where you just kind of take a chance on some of those guys. He's from Texas A&M Commerce. You take a chance on some of these guys and just hope they pop, and he certainly has looked the part. In theory, even a banged-up Taylon Green should be able to drop back and trust these pass catchers and not have to be rolling out all the time, throwing off platform, and making some of these decisions with, like the play is falling apart already. We got a Mid-pod sneeze from Will. I did that for the
I
first
didn't
time
turn
last
my
time.
video off. I let you
I
keep
know.
going. I muted myself.
I'm impressed. I've only sneezed, I think, once, like mid-pod, and it was like last week, and it freaked me out. I never do this. I don't know why I never do this, but you're excused. Bless you, of course. But I think that against this really struggling pass defense that did play better. I shouldn't say it's struggling that much. Mississippi State did show some things against Connor Wigman that made you think that they had a pulse, but still worst ranked unit in the SEC. This should be a better spot for this Arkansas offense. So somewhat reluctantly, I'm going to say this game feels a lot different than last year. And Arkansas wins 34-32. Mississippi State covers the spread.
I actually think in a weird way, it almost feels like disagreeing with you, even though we both have Arkansas winning, because like we got to really ask some hard questions about Tennessee if this Arkansas defense doesn't completely shut down Mississippi State, because the way that Mississippi State has been successful has been kind of airing the ball out, spreading it around, like Levy's system and all that, and we've seen Arkansas's defense against that type of a like spread the ball around wide open style in Tennessee shut them down. So I think that's kind of there. And again, like the Mississippi State defense hasn't been great. So that's the way I view it. The Mississippi State offense has been surprisingly good outside of the Toledo game, which we just keep laughing about because it was so uncharacteristic of how scrappy this team has been. Usually the Mississippi State offense is surprisingly good. I actually think because of the scheme and Williams, like the DC at Arkansas, that's actually they're kind of play one of their worst games of the year, Mississippi State's offense. And then on the other side of that, yeah, I think Taylor Green and Bobby Petrino are just probably going to turn this defense into barbecue chicken, which has been kind of like, there have been some big stops. Like, don't get me wrong, they had some big stops against Texas and stuff like that. But, you know, we talked about like Carson Beck having the get right game, having almost 500 yards, and then just like forgetting how to play football the next game. So like, I do think Mississippi State is just not, they don't have a full SEC roster yet, just based on how weird things have been for them for the last couple of years. So I think when you play a team like Arkansas that, say what you will about Arkansas, they have an identity.
Yeah.
They got Bobby Petrino and Taylor Green. I know exactly what those guys can do. On defense, I know their formation because it exposed Tennessee in a way. They're actually a team. They're embracing the hog over there. They have DNA. One of the strongest DNAs in the SEC. That's why they beat Tennessee with a backup quarterback. So I'm going to go Arkansas big. Like, let's call it 3 scores.
We agree, though, that you can't fully embrace the hog until you embrace Braylon Russell, the 253-pound freshman, and start giving that guy the rock more.
You got to.
You have to. Jaquindon
That's
Jackson,
the hog right there. Let him free.
Yeah. Jaquindon Jackson, look, even if he's banged up, if he's healthy, whatever the case may be, get this guy involved, get that ground game going. I think they should have some of those opportunities. And I'm worried. I'm really, really worried if this turns into Taylor Green running for his life, because Mississippi State right now doesn't have the dudes up front that should be chasing around a quarterback like that. You should be able to play a relatively limited kind of basic. I was basic's the wrong word. Let me take that away. But you shouldn't have to necessarily do too much improvising in a matchup like this if you're Taylor Green. And if you do, and if things are bringing down, I know he always does.
And yet
he always does. But yeah, hopefully just don't give us another 7-3. That's all I asked for. All right. Auburn, Kentucky. Kentucky's a 2.5-point favorite. The over-under I have is 1 Alex McPherson field goal. My guy. This poor dude. I voted Alex McPherson preseason All-SEC in part because, like, yeah, he didn't miss a kick last year. He was a Lou Groza Award semifinalist. But also because I felt bad that this guy had irritable bowel syndrome that he's been dealing with all year. All year.
Bro,
I thought that was
thank you, because I thought I was going crazy. I was like, Auburn has a good kicker. Who's this guy?
Oh, God. I don't – look – I hope that guy is in good spirits, because that is something no human being should have to deal with for that long. I have not dealt with that on a personal level, but I can only begin to imagine, and then I'd like to imagine something else.
Right.
This guy hasn't played yet. Instead, and Hugh Freeze said, like, maybe he could have played last week, but instead, Towns Magoo.
Come on, bro.
He's out here making half his kicks. If we lined up Towns Magoo in the McAfee Challenge, are we sure he's making that kick? And I hate to be too critical of someone that's on scholarship to do literally one thing, but are we sure he's making that kick?
I mean, he's a backup kicker for Hugh Freeze, though. That's the thing. Is it's like Hugh Freeze, like we talked about, kind of broke him mentally by like trying to fire drill that kick, and then like they had to do it again. It's just a rough spot for our guy Towns Magoo, who Auburn fans have seen one thing consistently, and it's special teams play.
Is there another Carlson that can kick?
Like there's
got to be
like
one
in
more
a lab creating a Carlson. Like,
good, get the clone. Goodness. The good news, according to Hugh Freeze, is that the shorter kicks this week will belong to McPherson, like the 35-yard range. Why would he bring that up? Probably because he watched Towns Magoo shank a 30-yarder last week, if I had to guess. Like, I don't care if we need to get this guy on the field in a diaper. Just do whatever you can to get that guy out there making some kicks. McPherson, goodness gracious, I hope he can have a good few hours because that just sounds terrible. Auburn is going to be in YOLO territory in certain spots here because, with all due respect to Towns Magoo, he is, as you could probably guess, 0 for 3 on kicks, 50 yards. Why is he kicking that long? I do not know. Why did I bring up all that? Did I just want to talk about irritable bowel syndrome and raise awareness for it?
That was just a blind spot in my mind because literally I was like, huh? Wait, where do you go? Anyway.
Yeah, we're talking about kickers and poop. Kind of fitting for this game.
You told me that at media days, and I assumed he recovered and that he lost the job, and I was like, "What's going on here?"
Yeah, this game could come down to a kick, so that's why we're talking about it. It feels relevant, at least, and maybe it'll be brought up on the broadcast. But be honest with yourself; that's far more entertaining than any other angle for this game. It is, you know it. Both you fan bases, you know what I'm talking about. The angle I keep thinking about is how Kentucky is 1-8 in its last 9 SEC home games. And Auburn actually has looked more competent on the road than at home this year. Maybe Auburn needs to be spotted 21 points in the fourth quarter to hold on. I don't know what that number is. Maybe the number is, to quote Mean Girls, limit does not exist. But I do think that this Auburn defense with Jalen McLeod has the ability to give a struggling Kentucky offense problems. And this is a game where those Auburn receivers who continue to get better and continue to show progress, I think they make enough plays against this Kentucky secondary that still might be without Maxwell Harrison. Hasn't been back since week 4. I don't know that I'm banking on that anytime soon, but I think Auburn gets on the board in SEC play thanks to an Alex McPherson field goal from 36 yards. That guy gets a great moment. Auburn wins 20-17.
Connor, I have no idea what's going to happen in this game. It's so rare for me to look at a game and go, I have no idea.
I'm talking about kickers and poop, Will.
It's funny because I wanted to make a joke about fourth downs, but you could argue that Mark Stoops extinguished those demons or exercised those demons against Ole Miss, and then they just went right back in the So I'm gonna just hope both teams have fun and go with you and pick Auburn because I don't want to fight about this.
Goodness, if Auburn doesn't win, Auburn fans, if y'all want to win this one, Ofer. Are we talking 2012 levels? I won't say who was the coach of that team for obvious personal reasons that we don't need to get into at this time. But are we talking Ofer in SEC play? That's on the table. You got to get this one for Auburn. Have to. All right. Fade of the week. It's no longer lock of the week. Diego Pavia couldn't cover. So that's why we needed a rebranding of sorts. Just a rebranding. That's all it is, really. We're not going to point out the fact that I'm 2-6 this year in this category. It's funny. I told Lauren this. Last week, if you go back and listen to the preview pod, the Texas game, horrible. Lock of the week, horrible. Everything else was spot on except those two things that I was so unbelievably wrong about. But that's this, that's the way this works out. Even it was like during the day, I said, Lauren, this day has gone closer to my prediction than any day ever has. So that means the night slate is going to be awful for me, and I'm going to eat tremendous amounts of crow at some point. And of course, it was what Georgia did to Texas that allowed me to eat that crow. Water found its level. That's all it was. Fate of the week. Illinois, 21.5-point dog at Oregon. Illinois can play some defense, man. Bird's got him playing. He really does. I know the Purdue game was bad, and maybe that's kind of factoring into this line and why people are like, Illinois defense, how good is it? Purdue's first game with a new offensive coordinator, didn't really have that film to be able to kind of fall back on. That's what I'm telling myself. I think Illinois is the type of team that can frustrate Dylan Gabriel. Everyone's patting Oregon on the back after the Ohio State win. You know what? Oregon's turned the corner. You're the number 1 team in the country. Sounds familiar, right, Alabama? I think Bird's got himself a really nice squad. I really do. And OG listeners of the show know I love me some Luke Altmaier. Never sold that stock. I sold some stock. I sold some. Not all of it, but some. I think that the former Ole Miss quarterback is at least competing in this game. I think this is more of a dogfight than a blowout. So Illinois plus 21.5 is the fate of the week.
You know, it's funny. This was an off-the-board team that I picked as America's team, and I was like, I can't exactly explain to you why.
Yes.
And then they
Good
brought
call,
out the
Will.
red Grades jerseys and just
Yeah.
smoked Michigan, and Burt was like on the sideline. They almost beat Penn State too, and I'm like, this is a legitimately very good team.
Yeah.
Like, because I thought it would be kind of goofy and fun, but like they are. But that's just kind of actually they're fundamentally solid. I ride with it. I like it.
They're like a 9-3 type team that's like just kind of frisky and not a particularly fun team to play against. We were talking about, South Carolina is they're in a different category than South Carolina because South Carolina has the 3 losses. But if we get to a situation where like if they lose this game and then they're unranked, the argument of scariest unranked teams would be Illinois and South Carolina. You just kind of throw them in there. Just not a fun team to deal with for 60 minutes. So fade of the week. There you go, people. All right, let's kick it to Adam Breneman. Great to catch up with him. Someone that's been all over the place. CBS Sports, Big Ten Network, Yahoo. He's probably got 6 other platforms that I forgot to name here. But Adam has just been all over the place as a college football analyst. So let's talk some ball with Adam. Now excited to be joined by a very special guest. It is your algorithm's favorite college football analyst. It is Adam Breneman. You haven't been described like that before, have you?
That was good. That was good. Expecting that. I was wondering when I heard your I was wondering where you were going with that, but that was good.
Yeah. The algorithm loves it. Some Adam Breneman. Look, you have cranked out so many videos over the course of the last couple of years, but I was trying to do the math one day of trying to be like, how many videos do you do in a specific day, like Monday through Wednesday, when you're not doing one of your other million jobs that you have in college football? But can I guess? Do you do like 12 videos a day?
Yeah. So if we're counting across every platform, it's probably more. But as far as like original pieces of content, because what happens is, as you know, like I'll film a video, make it, and then that video will go on 5 different platforms: Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, across all there. So I would say like if of just original pieces of content, probably in like the 7 range, 6 to 7. I don't know if we've hit 12, but it feels like that because if you see a video on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, it's all just one piece of content. It gets posted everywhere for maximum distribution. But yeah, I've definitely taken the approach of the quantity approach in content, and just kind of believing that every time you put something out, it is a chance that people see it, that it goes well. And I think it's hard. Like, you don't really know if content's going to be good or bad. Like I have no clue. Like I posted a video that I thought was like not that entertaining a while ago, ended up being one of my best performing videos, still going now, millions and millions of views. And it's like if I wouldn't have had the quantity, I might have never got to that video, would have never put that out. So it's hard to really tell what's going to go well. So I just say, let's just post a lot and let the algorithm dictate what's good and what's not.
It's funny because when you were on 2.5 years ago, it was right before you were about to really dive into the content game on the college football side. And correct me if I'm wrong here, you essentially set out on this plan to be like I don't want to call you an older millennial. You're an older millennial. You're born in 95. You count as a millennial, but it's like a Gen Z strategy, so to speak. And it kind of fills a unique space. Like that's you kind of want to be like the millennial Gen Z Herb Street. Am I wrong?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would say, I always say that like my mission is to be Gen Z's college football analyst. And I think that means meeting Gen Z and millennials where they're at, which is social media. Remove as much friction as possible with how you reach them. So it's TikTok, Instagram, it's YouTube, it's long form shows and content like podcasts, which I do, as you know. And yeah, I mean, I think that when I got into this space, you see a lot of polished broadcasters, people who took the TV first approach, like a Joel Klatt, a Kirk Herbstreit, a lot of these guys that have had a ton of success, but no one has really dominated or owned that social media Gen Z audience. And now as audience goes, as attention transfers from really like television to phones and tablets and streaming, I think that's going to be important. Like who controls that audience? Who does that audience recognize as the face of college football? And that was kind of the demographic I went out to try to reach, and it's been successful. I still think there's a lot of other people doing a great job that are trying to hit it as well. And I've started to venture more, as you know, into the TV space now as well, and try to do both. But it's been fun. It's been kind of, I set out on that path of 2 years ago, as you mentioned, and to see kind of where it is now and all the opportunities that have come up, and how, even like I was just on a call with a coaching staff today, preparing for my game this weekend, and one of the offensive coordinator says, Adam, I love your podcast, your interviews with the coaches, I love your content. When I go call a game, like, it's cool when like I walk on the field pregame to see the coaches and stuff, and someone in the student section, like, they're not saying like, oh, is that Adam Breneman, the football player? Like, no one's saying that. It's like, oh, it's the guy from TikTok, right? It's the tight end from TikTok. And it's funny that, like, seeing that shift and kind of seeing it pay off has been super fun.
Let's start with something that I've been wondering about for a bit here. And look, I told you this. I've told everybody who listens to the show this. I'm not a James Franklin guy for one reason or another. You are, obviously. Sell me on why Penn State is actually a national title contender and not just a team that's going to go 10-3 and lose to the only elite foes that it faces this year.
Well, I mean, we'll see how the rest of the season goes. I mean, I think when you look at Penn State this season, everything's gone the way that they've wanted it to. Now, and I think deserving of that number 3 ranking in the country. When you look at the fact that they beat USC, they beat a top 25 Illinois team, they beat West Virginia, what wasn't supposed to be an easy game to start the season, and have played pretty good football. Now, there's also concerns. I mean, that USC game could have gone the other way pretty fast. I mean, there was a point in that game where it didn't look good. Penn State needed 2 fourth-down conversions and 2 plays by Julian Fleming and a field goal by their kicker to win that game. Illinois game was I think a tie game or close game at halftime. So there's concerns and things that need to be cleaned up. The run game against USC wasn't good enough for Penn State to win ball games. But I think the exciting part about the USC game was that it was Drew Aller's coming out party a little bit. It was kind of a grow up moment for Drew Aller. And I thought the best part of it was that was Drew Aller's best game he's played at Penn State. It is his best game. Now, he threw 3 interceptions, really 2 plus a Hail Mary interception. But I never thought that his best game at Penn State would be when he throws 3 picks. But Drew Aller grew up and found a way to win that game and made some huge throws down the stretch. And the concern has always been, can Drew Aller be the guy that can go win football games? And he proved that he can against USC, who I think USC is still a pretty good football team. They've lost some close games, and it's been tough. I almost feel bad for Lincoln Riley a little bit with how tough those games have been. They're a good team, and Drew Aller found a way to win that game. So now, I mean, they got a tough Wisconsin game. Then it gets real. I mean, you got Ohio State, Washington on the schedule. Maryland's playing some decent football. So it's going to be tough, but I think now the expectation for Penn State fans is that Penn State makes the college football playoff. And now with the expanded playoff, I really think that means that Penn State's either got to find a way to host a first-round playoff game, win a first-round playoff game. Like, there has to be some kind of, just being, while fans will be happy, just being the 12th seed in the playoff and losing, or the 11th seed in the playoff and losing in week 1 of the playoff isn't going to be good enough. Like, Penn State has to compete. But I do think that for everything we've seen, that they're well on the way to doing that this season.
You talked about things are going to get real after Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I love me some Camp Randall at night. You love yourself some Camp Randall at night. I seem to remember a certain 60-yard pass from a Christian Hackenberg, 2013. I don't remember who was on the receiving end of that, but yeah, it was a nice play, nice long play. You worried about that one this weekend for Penn State? Because it feels like if a top 5 team is going to go down, that's a likely candidate. Yeah,
it's funny you mentioned that play. It's like every time Penn State plays Wisconsin, that like people post that play, and I'm like, so I saw someone complaining like, why do we post this play from Adam Breneman's career so much? And I'm like, well, it's the only play from my career that you guys could post at Penn State. It's the only one I made. But no, I think Wisconsin's a good football team, and Luke Fickell. I mean, everyone slept on Luke Fickell for a while now. Everyone said. I heard the chatter. I mean, after week 1 and week 2, I mean, people were saying Luke Fickell can't figure it out at Wisconsin. They don't play physical. It's not Wisconsin football. But Luke Fickell in year 2 at Cincinnati, that's really where he turned the corner at Cincy and turned that program around. They started winning a ton of football games. Now you blink an eye, and Wisconsin's got 5 games left, and they're 5-2. and they're playing good ball. Their defense has given up like 16 points in the last 3 games I just saw. I mean, some crazy numbers, and they're back to playing that like physical Wisconsin football brand of defense. And for Penn State, James Franklin's really good at getting the guys to focus one game at a time and think in the moment. But I mean, man, if there was ever a time that there was going to be a slow start or a slip up, I mean, having Ohio State, which is going to be the game of, one of the games of the year in college football in 2 weeks at home at Penn State on big noon kickoff. I mean, this is it. So like, this is going to be this will tell us a lot about Penn State. This will be one of James Franklin's toughest coaching battles of the year. I mean, to go out and have to travel to Wisconsin to find a way to keep everyone focused and take care of the task at hand against a Wisconsin team that's getting hot at the right time.
Who would get your Heisman vote if you were voting today?
Oh, great question. I just had this debate with someone. I as of right now, I would go with Cam Ward. I think Cam Ward, and being with having Miami undefeated, he is single-handedly the reason Miami is where they're at. I mean, their defense is atrocious. He has been the way that he creates with his legs, the numbers he's put up, how poised he is in the pocket, his arm strength and his arm talent. I would vote Cam Ward right now for those. How he's had the best individual performances, other than maybe Ashton Genty at Boise State, but I'm just not ready to give a Boise State player the Heisman Trophy vote right now. Now, if Boise finds a way to win the Mountain West and make the playoff, I think that's where it changes for me a little bit. But as of right now, I'd take Cam Ward for finding ways to win games, being undefeated, and having the best individual performance for quarterback.
One of those other guys that probably feels like he's going to be part of the conversation because he's got that Ohio State win in his back pocket is Dylan Gabriel.
Yeah.
And you see the way that game plays out and feels like, okay, maybe that's going to be a matchup that we see later in the season, Big Ten Championship. Who do you think is a bigger threat to the SEC's elite, Ohio State or Oregon?
Yeah, I still think that Ohio State wins the Big Ten. I think Ohio State will win the Big Ten championship and beat Oregon in the Big Ten championship game. But that's not to take away from Dylan Gabriel and Oregon. I think what Dan Lanning's done is phenomenal, and they won that game. And Dylan Gabriel, I mean, the best part about Dylan Gabriel in that game against Ohio State was that when his team needed it the most, he made a Heisman play. Like, he made plays. He ran in for the touchdown. He made throws. He took care. Now, he struggled with turnovers, which is my concern with Dylan. And like, he's more experienced and better than that. He needs to clean that up. But to me, Ohio State still has the best roster in the Big Ten. I don't see Will Howard making the mistake that he made, the multiple mistakes at the end of that game that he made. I think he's going to learn from that. I really like Will Howard. I love the ability Ohio State has to run the football with Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. I mean, people forget, like, Chip Kelly loves to run the ball. Like, everyone thinks about Chip Kelly in the air raid, right, and throwing the ball around the spread offense. So not the air raid, the spread offense. Chip Kelly wants to run the ball, and they have the ability to do it. And when they can, it helps Will Howard a ton, and then they can distribute on the play action RPO game. So I still think Ohio State wins the Big Ten. I think they'll be the biggest threat to knocking off whoever ends up winning the SEC when it comes to playoff time.
Counterpoint, in my totally unbiased opinion, Indiana part of the mix, just throwing it in there. Just saying, look, if they don't get held out of the Big Ten championship again, I'm just saying it could be a very interesting path for the Hoosiers come playoff time. As an unbiased Indiana grad, I just feel the need to kind of throw
That's
that
right.
in.
I forgot you're an Indiana grad. I mean, unbelievable what Kirk Cinnetti's done. I was there this offseason, did a visit with them, an interview with Kirk Cinnetti. It was awesome. We were like 5 minutes late for the interview. We had a time schedule with Coach Cinetti. Something happened with the microphone, so like we weren't ready. Like, we were there, but the setup wasn't done by the time he was going to come in for the interview. It was like a noon interview. Get there at 11, film at noon. So like 12:05 comes and Coach like walks in, and we had warned him that we were running late. And as you can imagine, like he's funny. He's also like extremely, what's the word? Like, doesn't really show a ton of emotion, and especially when he's like angry or you can tell he's annoyed, he gets like sarcastic with his comments. And he was just chirping us the whole time, like, you're making the head coach wait for your interview. I mean, we let you guys come in here, you're not even ready. I mean, just all that kind of stuff. And he was like joking, but also kind of like scary in how he was saying it. So after that, I talked to our video crew. I'm like, we're never gonna we need to charge the microphones. We got to make sure our cameras are set up. But he was great. The interview was fun. He was awesome to be around. I'd never met him before, but just what he's done and the confidence he's given that program and the way he's gotten Curtis Rourke to play his best football of his career. Really cool to see also. Like there's multiple ways to build a program in college football, but like to go get a guy, and this is my favorite way to get a quarterback, like get a guy who's done it at a lower level in the MAC, that's performed at a high level, that can play when he can play his best when his best is needed, and then develop him a little bit and have him play in the Big Ten. I mean, that's the formula, and it's working at Indiana. And Curtis Rourke, when Kirk Cinetti has Indiana, possibly at 1 loss, 2 losses at the end of the year, and competing for a Big Ten championship. I mean, it'll be one of the greatest calling of your own shots that we've seen with that. What he said at Big Ten, it was a Big Ten media day or his press conference where he said, "I win, Google me." So it's been fun. It's got to be fun as an Indiana fan to be following it, I'm sure.
Be honest, you would, a couple too many Long Island iced teas at Kilroy's the night before.
Yeah, it was my fault. I was struggling. I was still. The video crew was there. I was just lollygagging around that morning.
Bloomington gets the best of us, man. It absolutely does. Whose future do you feel better about? And you can take this any direction you want. You can go short term, you can go long term. Whose future do you feel better about between Michigan and Alabama's?
Great question. I feel better about Alabama's future because I'm a Kalen DeBoer believer. What he did at Washington and the body of work he has in his career as a head coach speaks for itself. He's won everywhere he's been. He won at Sioux Falls. I couldn't tell you where that is. He won at every level, D2, D3. And then he did it at Washington with talent, but not as much talent as he's going to have at Alabama. And listen, this season hasn't gone the way they wanted. Also have had some unreal moments this season. I mean, that first half performance against Georgia, they ran them off the field in the first half of that game. I also think that he's made some pretty good hires. I like Nick Sheridan, his offensive coordinator. I think his defensive coordinator, forgetting his name now.
Cade Womack,
Cade Womack from South Alabama. I think that's a really good hire. Now, yes, there's issues to clean up. The discipline needs to get better, but Kalen DeBoer wins football games. He knows how to build a program. He's got the best general manager in the game in Courtney Morgan. They're going to win at Alabama. My concern with Michigan, and I like Sharon Moore. I mean, I've known Sharon Moore for a long time. I think he's a great football coach. He hasn't been a head coach. And I think one of the biggest mistakes of the offseason in college football is Sharon Moore not going out and getting a transfer portal quarterback.
Yep.
The fact that he didn't go out and identify that as an issue and say we need to bring someone in here. I mean, we're the defending national champions. We can't go get a quarterback from the portal that can win us games. And the fact that we're talking about Alex Orji and Jack Tuttle at Michigan is not acceptable if you're a Michigan fan. Like, those should not be our options at quarterback. And the fact that Alex Orji didn't go like win that job right away this offseason tells you there was concern about Alex Orji from the start. I mean, the fact that he wasn't like named the starter from day one and it was a battle, these coaches should have seen that. And I don't know what goes on behind the scenes, and maybe they tried to get a quarterback and couldn't. But that will be Sharon Moore's biggest mistake. I think he'll reflect on that and say, I missed that, and this team needs a better quarterback. And the issue is, like, everyone says, okay, well, Michigan wasn't explosive and dominant on offense when they had J.J. McCarthy at quarterback. But what happens is that when you don't have an explosive quarterback and you can't throw the football, your margin of error in every other part of the game becomes so small. You can't make mistakes on defense. You can't turn the football over. You can't give up explosive plays rushing. So and Michigan's not quite good enough at all those phases right now to make up for the lack of offense they have. And that's my concern. And I think Sharon Moore will figure it out. But right now, if I had to say next season who's going to be better, I would say Alabama, I mean, with a lot of confidence.
Team that didn't have to go out into the portal and get a quarterback, LSU. You're high on LSU. Yeah. Do you think the Tigers win this weekend at A&M and win an SEC title? How do you kind of see the rest of their season playing out?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think that the first thing is it's fast college football world's change. Think about LSU after week one and what we were talking about with USC. I mean, it was just crazy to think about the difference now that we're, 8 weeks later. I mean, I was on a show talking about USC's back and their defense is elite and Lincoln Riley's coach of the year. And now Brian Kelly can never figure it out. And now to be in the situation LSU's in, where they just beat Arkansas, they beat a really good Ole Miss team, and Jackson Dart in overtime, to win some of those games has been impressive. The one thing about Brian Kelly teams is they seem to always find a way to get better throughout the season. Like they improve and they become a better team. I remember watching them. I watched the LSU South Carolina game back. I mean, I watched that game and I was like, man, LSU does not deserve to win this game. I can't believe they won, right? It was like one of the sloppiest football games I've ever seen, but they've taken strides since then. Their offensive line has played better. Their defense has played really well. And then Garrett Nussmeier has done what he's had to do to win football games. He's thrown 6 interceptions this season, so still needs to clean up some of that. But I think LSU has proven that they're now a top, 7-8 team in college football. If Garrett Nussmeier can continue playing the way that he's playing and manage the game, allow Caden Durham to play to run the football well, which his kind of coming onto the scene has been great for LSU and their offense. I see LSU winning against Texas A&M, and then the rest of the season for them is once they get past A&M, it doesn't get any easier. They got Bama. They get Oklahoma, who's not playing super well. They have Vanderbilt, who knows? No one wants to play Vanderbilt right now. So again, it gets real for them, as a lot of teams it does in the SEC. But also, like, SEC is wide open. I mean, we have no clue what's going to happen, right? I mean, you covered it close to anyone. I mean, you got a bunch of teams that could be right there fighting for it. I mean, is Ole Miss really out of the picture? Is a lot. No one really knows right now where this will end up. It's going to come down to these last few weeks.
I buried the lead here. You played at UMass, All-American at UMass. I know your timelines didn't line up, but yeah. UMass AD Ryan Bamford, I am convinced this man could solve all the world's problems after he got Mizzou to come up to that home and home. It's the single most impressive home and home agreement that I have ever seen an athletic director at this level of college football get. Please tell me anything you know about that man. Do you know his favorite color, his favorite soda? I need to find out more about Ryan Bamford.
Well, I love Ryan Bamford. He was there when I was there, so I know Ryan well. When I was transferring in, he was a big part of. I met with him when I was deciding where I was going to transfer. I mean, of
course he was.
He has what's that?
Of course he was. Of course he was there. I forgot that he was there not in the AD role beforehand. So of course he was part of the recruiting pitch, and he got you to. He was probably handing you the pen to sign on the dotted line.
Exactly. He's like, please come on in. But he's awesome, very smart guy, and I think one of the best moves he's done is now getting UMass in a conference in the MAC. I mean, that needed to happen. I was telling him that years ago. I'm like, dude, we have to be in a conference, even if it's the MAC, right? Like any conference, just get UMass in a conference. But yeah, I mean, seeing Missouri walk into McGurk Alumni Stadium when they're used to playing at
Gillette,
Gillette. I mean, it's just crazy. So. It is certainly impressive. Now the game didn't go very well for UMass, but it is cool. One of the things about being independent is you do get to play a lot of cool teams, right? Like when I was at UMass, we played South Carolina, Mississippi State, Florida, Tennessee, a lot of these cool places. Just because we're independent, we were trying to get some money for our school.
Okay, speaking of money, have they hit you up asking you for some money, for those facility upgrades? Because, buddy, they are needed. It's bad.
Yeah. So the UMass football facility is actually pretty nice. The stadium, McGurk Alumni Stadium, not so much. And it's been improved. It was even worse when I was playing there. It was funny because when I went from Penn State to UMass, I would have buddies come visit for the games at UMass, and everyone would be like, oh my God, like, this is where you're playing? Like, imagine the difference between Penn State and UMass. And so they have not yet asked for money. I'm sure they will soon or someday soon, or at least ask me to help raise the money. But listen, I do think that at UMass, I get asked this more than people would probably think, considering it's like UMass football. But a lot of people ask me about UMass. I think it's an interesting story with like how much they've struggled to make the transition to FBS, where other programs have done it with relative. I mean, look at James Madison, right? Like other programs have done it relatively easily.
Texas State, that's
Texas State. Yeah, I think that overall, UMass is in a tough place from a geography recruiting standpoint. The resources are okay, but not good enough to compete the way James Madison's are and the way Texas State is and things like that. But at the end of the day, man, like winning fixes everything, and UMass has to find a way to win a couple ball games. Like if UMass won 4 games, the entire mood would shift, right? Everything would be different. It's now easier to get yeses on resources. It's easier to get yeses on recruiting spend. It's easier to get yeses on NIL, easier to get yeses on changing the stadium. If you build it and you win, people will come. The fans will come. So I hear the complaints from people about how hard it is to rebuild a place like UMass, but at the end of the day, you got to play football, and you have to win some games. Like you can't have one win every season and think that it's ever going to change.
Yeah, if all else fails, just line Ryan Bamford up at tight end and let him do everything on the football field. And
he's in good shape. I mean, he's like 6'3", 6'4", good looking guy. He can play tight end.
Last one for you. You just started the Ball Club for all things Tennessee content. Tell our listeners about that and why specifically Tennessee, kind of given your background.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you bringing it up. I mean, so I'm a co-founder and chief media officer at a company called the College Sports Company. And what we do is we build athlete-driven media networks at schools around the country to drive more NIL revenue for their collectives. As you know, man, in college football, every school and collective has a revenue problem. They got to find ways to drive more revenue to pay their players more money, whether it's through revenue sharing, like the cap that's going to be paid by the school, or outside of the revenue sharing, true NIL that these collectives are coming up with. They're trying to find ways to make more money. And NIL has gone from now being donor funded, just asking the donor for $1 million every year. That was great for year one, but when you ask your donor for $1 million and then you go 6-6 and you ask for it again the next year, he's like, I just gave you $1 million and we won 6 games, right? So the donor funded model's out, and now these collectives are trying to figure out how to drive real revenue. And our bet and our belief as a company is that these collectives and schools have to become media companies to drive that money. And what we do is we set up a media network at these schools with the collective. We're doing it at Tennessee with the Vol Club to launch Rock Media, which will be the official media network of the Vol Club at Tennessee. And we'll have shows with current players on the football team, current players on other teams around Tennessee athletics, former athletes at Tennessee, fans, everything you can imagine, events, social media content. And we produce really high quality content for the fans. And then, like any media company, we monetize it through sponsorship, advertising, merchandise sales to events, and then drive the money for NIL at Tennessee. So it's what we're doing around the country. We have media networks at South Carolina called 1801 Media, Louisville called Floyd Street Media, Penn State called State Media, and now Tennessee called Rock Media. So it's been exciting, been fun. I mean, I think we're really starting to change the way that schools and collectives are starting to think about NIL and what it means to drive real NIL revenue.
Awesome stuff. Really, really appreciate the time. They got a million things going on. If you want to follow Adam's work, the algorithm will probably find it for you.
Wait, can I ask one question to end this thing? I mean, you asked me who my Heisman pick is. I wanted to hear who yours is.
Oh, if I'm voting today, Travis Hunter's getting my vote.
Really? Okay.
Football unicorn to do the things that he's doing at this stage with all the eyeballs on him, every single play, can't take a play off. Bad film is going to be seen by everyone with how much national attention they're getting. He would get my vote. And honestly, I know this goes against what you were saying. I probably put Ashton Genty at 2, and it helps that he had 200 scrimmage yards against Oregon. That's a big, big part of it. To do that against the Dan Lanning defense, man, like that's no joke. So I'd go with that, and then Cam Ward would probably be my third. But
and then what? Dylan Gabriel at 4, probably.
Probably Dylan Gabriel at 4. It's weird to be at this stage of the season and not feel like there's a true SEC contender. Diego Pavia would be. I mean, let's be honest.
It's exciting though. I mean, it's wide open, man. I mean, who knows? I mean, even one of these SEC quarterbacks could have a great last 5 games of the year and be right in the mix as well.
Yeah, Jalen Milroe was my preseason pick. Not looking as hot. Obviously, crazy things can happen down the stretch. I don't think he's going to get enough of those opportunities, but it's going to be a fun race. I'm glad to actually get into some of these nuanced discussions and stuff where it feels like we have a lot of resources at our disposal. So I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about it again at some point.
No doubt. Appreciate it.
Awesome.
Man. Thanks for having me on.
Man.
See ya.
All right, well, let's close with some lad of the week. I feel like people are going to know where I'm going to go with this. So do you want to, you start because mine's a little bit more predictable.
No, I want to hear yours actually.
Okay. I'm going Curt Cignetti, going with the Indiana coach who, look, he wins. Google him. I've said before how I don't count myself as an Indiana fan because I think to be considered a fan of anything, it has to hurt you when that team loses, and it does not hurt me when Indiana football loses. So I'm not going to, and if that makes me more of a bandwagon person, that's perfectly fine. I more so just love the attention that my school is getting, and I love the fact that for the first time ever, College game day on a Saturday, they hosted on a Thursday, opened the season. What was that? 2017? Yeah, 2017. J.K. Dobbins ran for like 1 billion yards that night.
Yes.
But for the first time ever on a Saturday, Bloomington will be hosting a college game day that is football, not basketball. And I can't wait. It's so cool for Corso, who obviously coached there way back when. Coached there when my aunt was at school at Indiana. I can't wait for all the shots of my campus. Not sure what the food choice is going to be. If it is barbecue, hoping it's Smokin' Jacks. They're the barbecue place that catered for our wedding. Like it's just, yeah, I'm going to enjoy it. Like Bloomington, it's a special place to us. I know, there are a lot of people that are all of a sudden talking about Indiana football that have never talked about Indiana football. And so to see this play out with a 7-0 start, second time in school history, first time since the LBJ administration. How do you like that? Yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch. And Cignetti, the job that he's done in year one, it's incredible. Oh, we got timers going off. I got an interview coming up in a second here, but yeah, it sucks that Curtis Rourke is out for this game, the Ohio transfer, the Canadian quarterback, but go figure that Taven Jackson is going to be the guy that's starting, former Tennessee quarterback.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Little brother of Trace Jackson Davis, IU legend. But yeah, I was saying this to Lauren. I've now talked myself into IU sneaking into the playoff. And I say sneak because, buddy, they might not get there with the top 25 win at 11-1. They lose that game to Ohio State and the rest of this. That's why I'm not pushing back. If people want to leave them outside the top 10 like that, look, I'm not sitting here banging the drum for that. But I don't care if they lose 58-0 in the playoff. Which, golly, I can't even believe I just said that in late October talking about Indiana football. But yeah, everybody's wondering if this is going to be a one and done situation with Cignetti, TBD and all that. But this is just why you have to soak all of this in, and why it's not all about who wins a national championship, and why it's not all about, oh, college football is better when team X is good. Oh, take that take and shove it up your you-know-what, because that's so bad. And I hope you're watching College game day on Saturday and tell me how bad the sport is because a team like Indiana is getting that stage.
Yes. And I actually, so first off, I think that being an Indiana grad has kind of been like perfect for you, right? Like we've talked about that. It's like
kind of is.
Yeah. Like you met Lauren there, and you're not from there, but it's a perfect, it introduced you, maybe not introduced you. I don't want to take credit for that, but the great city of Indianapolis, right? Maybe, the coach is slowly encroaching upon your title as the mayor of Indianapolis. Now that Peyton Manning is not there, the throne is
McAfee's got it. Nah, McAfee's going to take that title.
McAfee's got it.
Yeah, he's based in
fair.
Indy.
Yeah, that's fair. I can see that. But, so, yeah, the masthead of Indianapolis. But anyway, so yeah, no, I'm right there with you. It's kind of perfect for you. It's like, you got just to the far outside, just close enough to home. Met a lot of people. Yeah, they had a football team, but to your point, you got to watch SEC football. They had a basketball team that was good when you were there, and so it hasn't distracted you since then. And so, point being, now we have, this is kind of the dessert of all the stuff that you've been through for Indiana. So that's exciting, man.
1 year of good basketball I had. 1 year. It was a great year. Kentucky fans, you remember how that ended. But yeah, it'll be fun to watch on Saturday, and regardless of how this plays out, just very, very awesome. I talked about my cousin who's a senior there this year. She's having the time of her life and just soaking in all of this. It's fun when your school does something that it hasn't done in a very long time, or perhaps never. So yeah, this IU grad will be smiling ear to ear on Saturday morning.
Heck yeah, man. I'm going to go similar off the board. Obviously we're in the middle of college football season, so I'm going to do a little change up here. Shohei Ohtani. Now,
I thought you were going Bronny James. Okay, my bad.
Two very different individuals, but yeah, both LA based. Wow. And so, Shohei Ohtani was the classic, what would you call him? Like a cryptid, like a guy that we hear stories about that's like, oh, this guy was stuck on this team. He never got out of here. We never got to see his moments in October, and he obviously, came in the league as some type of like a folk hero. It was like, this guy could pitch, he could bat. I'm sure that like young Connor was obsessed with baseball. If he was coming up during your time, you'd be like, I got to get some eyes on this guy. I got to get a Huddle premium account, see what he's doing. Maybe not Huddle in Japan. I don't know, whatever the Japanese baseball television would be. And so I got to check this guy out, and he's lived up to the billing despite his team not doing that. He started in the biggest market with the brightest lights. And we've talked about this. Like, playing for the Clippers is not like playing for the Lakers. Playing for the Angels is not like playing for the Dodgers. And he started this season with that weird scandal with his interpreter that was a little bit different, and he had kind of everything stacked up against him. He's been injured, but to see Ohtani play postseason baseball is something that, even if it's for the evil empire of the Los Angeles Dodgers, we have a World Series that it's really hard to pick. I'm just going to root for this guy because at the end of the day, say what you will about his interpreter, but he has handled everything the right way. He has put his body out on the line to the point where I thought it would be destroyed by the dysfunctional Angels organization, who had probably the two greatest baseball players of our generation, honestly, him and Mike Trout, and have done nothing with him. And as a Pelicans fan, you don't ever want people to mess on your team whenever they're kind of cursed, as it were. But for that one, I'm like, man, you're robbing us these great moments in October that most people watch baseball because they're not going to be tuned in on a Tuesday night watching them lose by 5 and where he has 3 home runs or whatever. But the moment of him matched up with Paul Skeens this year, I think, was awesome for baseball. And I think seeing a guy who, he's not quite pitching anymore, which good, right? He's just maybe the greatest hitter in baseball. That's enough. But it's just super cool to see this guy paid his due. He did things the right way. When it was time to leave, he chose the Dodgers, but I think he suffered enough. I think that we should root for him because he's done literally everything he can.
Love me some Shohei. Mm-hmm. Love the fact that there are probably been how many billions of iterations of human beings who have walked this earth. Mm-hmm. And this is a guy that is different than all of them. Mm-hmm. Even all the ones who, even if we just want to narrow it down to the people that thought they wanted to play baseball at a competitive level and to see the things that he's doing. Yeah, it's absolutely insane. It doesn't quite feel real. And obviously not doing the pitching stuff that changes how we talk about him. But I think for somebody that doesn't have a rooting interest in this World Series, just seeing Shohei do awesome things is kind of the only thing that I actually care about, despite the fact that I don't really want to see the Dodgers win, but I don't want to see the Yankees win either.
The Yankees, I gotta find the silver lining in this World Series. It's here. Aaron Judge is cool, but I feel like the media's already kind of gotten all over him.
Yeah, let's just have Stanton and Shohei bombs back and forth. Shohei and Stanton and Judge home run derby. Just do that. That to me is worth more entertainment. Let's be honest, I'm not watching the World Series much. I'll see highlights.
Yeah, and that's really quick. And I'll look at that here on this. That's a really big culture shift in America because there would have been a time. Most of America, the last 100-year history, where there would be a ton of Caucasian kids walking around the greater Los Angeles area named Shohei. Based on how great he was, but he was on this weird team. It was a weird era in baseball. This is the greatest, not American, but the greatest athlete we have in America right now, probably, and just no one talks about him.
Some Olympic athletes probably push back on that a little bit, but yeah, in terms
he's playing 2 sports and has for most of his career. That's the crazy thing. He's pitching and batting, which are unrelated. Yeah,
I will make a lot of Travis Hunter Shohei comps over the course of the next couple months. Yeah, for sure. All right, that's a pod. Week 9, can't wait for it. It's going to be a really, really fun Saturday. Hopefully from start to finish. Hopefully, just watch College Game Day. See the place that your boy went to college, because this might be your only opportunity to do so for a very long time. If you haven't, leave us a 5-star review, subscribe to our YouTube channel where you can watch every single episode of the Saturday Down South podcast. Follow us on Twitter at the STS Pod, at Sat Down South, at CJ Guerra, at Go So Hard. Thanks, guys. Talk soon.